Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and I just wanted to give you a quick little message from one of our sponsors, LMNT, Element. It's spelled LMNT, but pronounced Element. If you haven't heard about this, Element is a tasty electrolyte drink mix with everything you need and nothing you don't. That means there's a lot of salt with no sugar, and it's formulated to help anyone with their electrolyte needs and is perfectly suited for those doing a keto, low carb, or paleo diet. And I think this is great for athletes, especially in the summertime and when you're training in warmer climates. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. None of the junk, no sugar, no coloring, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers. That's it. I like the unsweetened one because the other flavors do have a little stevia, but stevia doesn't do well in my body. So I prefer the unsweetened Element, and I like the packets because I can throw them in my bike bag when I go on a long bike ride or when traveling, and I can just dump a packet in my water, and it keeps me so much more hydrated. Because remember, we don't sweat out water, we sweat out minerals. So check it out. You've got a nice little gift from them if you use our discount code Drink Element. I'll put the link in the show notes. But using the code Low Carb Athlete, you get a free gift with purchase. You get a free Element sample pack with any order when you order with Low Carb Athlete on our special URL code. So support the podcast, support Element. It's backed by science, and we love what they're doing. So try it out. Hey guys, it's Debbie, and I have a fellow podcaster and coach on the show, Narado Zeco Powell. Was born in Montego Bay, Jamaica, and he has a story. We all have a why. What's our purpose? What's our passion? Why do we work so hard to help spread this word, doing podcasting that we pay for and doing coaching that's can be exciting, but it also can be draining because you're trying to help people be their best self. And as a health and nutrition fitness coach or holistic coach, you're giving a lot. So you have to make sure you practice what you preach and take your health in your own hands. And Narado Zeco Powell, I like saying his whole name together, Montego Bay, Jamaica. I have been there before. I love talking to him. He has a great story. He moved to the U.S. at age 16. Now, this is crazy. He was 5'11". I think he should still be 5'11", but he's 5'11" when he moved and weighed 113 pounds. Now, I'm 5'10" and a half. I'm tall female athlete, and I think I would be dead if I was 113 pounds. I think the skinniest I've been when I was too low weight was like 130. So when you're 5'11", you weigh a lot more, which is why I hate weighing myself. But 113 pounds. So by age 18, he was inspired to learn more about fitness and nutrition and took a special interest in fitness, spending 18 years educating himself by reading evidence-based scientific articles, learning from mentors, and trying different techniques. In 2018, he decided he wanted to use his knowledge to help others. So he's newer to the field, but you wouldn't know it because he's pretty knowledgeable in a lot of areas. And he started to be, he goes by Zeco, Certified Lumen Metabolic Coach. And he has 7 fitness and nutrition certifications from International Sports Sciences Association. So have to look that up. He shares his knowledge with others and several other social media platforms, including Twitter and Instagram. You know, I admire people that do that because, as I always say, I'm not very good on social media. It exhausts me. So as I know from someone that had so-called adrenal exhaustion, doing social media is one of those things that stresses me out. And as I learned in yoga, comparison is a thief of joy. So I try to not be someone I'm not. I try to be authentic, show up as myself on this show, and hopefully people will enjoy listening and feel like they're sitting here with me having a cup of coffee listening to me jabber. But Zeco does his social media, and it's a lot of work, and he does a great job at sharing this information. So he's very passionate about sharing this information that he learns and educating others along the way, hoping to inspire them to learn, to grow, to adapt, so he can help them get the updated information, because there's so much out there. It's so confusing because everyone says different things. Vegetables are good. Vegetables are bad. Meat is good. Meat is not good. Too much protein, too little protein. It's very confusing. So that's why he probably enjoys doing the Lumen, because it really helps give information if you are eating the right foods to burn fat or you're burning carbs, and teaches us more about that metabolic flexibility, that it is good to burn carbs sometimes, and then ideally we're burning mostly fat. So we'll talk to Zeco on his Lumen coaching experience. His podcast is called The Matter Over Mind Experience, and you can follow him on all the podcast apps and social media. But we're going to talk about why most weight loss approaches fail. What is metabolic flexibility, which I know you know what it is probably already because we talk about it all the time, but different perspectives again. How can someone achieve metabolic flexibilities, and what roles do workouts play in achieving metabolic flexibility? So if you're interested in Lumen, he'll talk about Lumen a little bit. You can save $50 with his discount code. I don't have one for Lumen yet, but if you want to get a $50 off, use Zeco Health, because all these affiliate links we always give, by the way, you pay the same price and never pay full price. Everything has a discount code. So you can get 10, 15, 20% off most everything, or is this $50 off? So use our podcast codes, because we pay to do podcasting. So that's how people make their money back to pay for all these fees. So that would be good to support him in ordering your Lumen. So let's talk about health, fat loss, nutrition, and tie it together for the athlete, the endurance athlete. So hopefully you enjoy the show. If you have any questions, head to my website, debbiepotts.net, and send me your questions there. The links and everything for his show notes are under podcast page, debbiepotts.net. So you can find everything there. And if you'd like to learn more on my coaching platform, head to the link that says schedule a discovery call, and we can chat about your goals and how I can maybe help you feel, look, and perform your best in life and sports. All right. See you soon. Hey guys, it's Debbie. And if you're watching the video, you'll notice I'm actually inside today. There's a little bit of a leftover hurricane coming into San Diego, and it's windy and the rain's just starting. So I came into the house instead of being outside, and it's dark. And this is 9 a.m. on a Friday. But we're going to talk to someone that I was connected with, a mutual friend, and I love talking about metabolic flexibility, how to test and not guess when we should be burning fat, or should you be burning carbs, or is it just important to have energy flux, is this new word, making sure that we are moving more throughout the day and exercising and eating enough quality nutrient dense foods, whatever the ratios, macro ratios work best for your unique body and microbiome and genetics, but matching your nutrition with your exercise. So we have energy output, energy input. I think a lot of us, including myself, I realize we don't often eat enough. And so we go into this, probably for women more so than men, a stress our body perceives lack of energy coming in. We're designed to recreate. And I think that kisspeptin hormone for women, we're a lot more sensitive of lack of energy in than out. And men can tolerate a little bit more, because that's the difference. Men and women are not the same. But we're going to talk to Narado Zeco Health. That's his podcast, Zeco Powell. And he is a Jamaican. I thought, listening to him, you can tell he's not British, but Jamaican. And he's from born in Montego Bay, Jamaica, and as his child was underweight, he moved to the United States at age 16. He was 5'11" and weighed 113 pounds. I can't even imagine that. By age 18, he was inspired to learn more about fitness and nutrition and took a special interest in fitness, spending 18 years educating himself. So we're going to talk about metabolic efficiency, metabolism, energy, all that. So hold on. All right. I've got another great guest on the show to dive into my favorite topic, metabolic flexibility, and how to bring all the information that we hear out there in mainstream media, other podcasts and blogs for the endurance athlete, how we can burn fat, optimize health, and improve the aging process, longevity, which I say every show, that should be our main priority, is training our future self, not just training for ourselves today or this year. So thank you coming on the show and sharing your story, your why, and about your podcast. And you got like a zillion certifications, I think more than me. So
that's because I'm a nerd.
Yeah. Well, isn't it true? It's like you get started in this industry in fitness, and I've been doing this plus over 25 years. That's like always some new certification, new practitioner program, something else. And then you get into an area, and then there's another one, and then it's just never ending.
Yeah, no worries. So my name is Narado Zeco Powell. I'm a master trainer and host a podcast, The Matter Over Mind Experience. There I interview some of the top health experts in the world. We talk about ways to improve your health, manage your body weight, and just try to get you to operate at the highest level that you really can. Really is a biohacking podcast, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't want to just say biohacking because that's been thrown around all over these days. But how I really got into this is I grew up with asthma and eczema and a few other health issues that I was just told was normal. And Jamaicans, I grew up in Montego Bay, Jamaica, and we have a thing. They say you're going to grow out of it. That's their thing. Rowan and I were talking about this even yesterday, because she's from Trinidad and it's a Caribbean thing. They're like, oh, you're just going to grow out of it. Well, I didn't grow out of it. And it got worse. So eventually I went to the doctor. Well, I've always been going to the doctor, but he started putting me on like Advair and pills. And I don't even remember the names of the pills that he put me on, but that's a trigger for me because I hate pills. And that was a sign that I'm going down the wrong rabbit hole now. Yeah. And I said to my doctor, I was like, hey, is something I could do nutrition wise or lifestyle to kind of help me so I can really get off this stuff? And he kind of smirked a little bit, right? And he was like, well, you can try to eat better, but he had nothing to tell me. And I was like, I'm paying for this? I was like, what's happening, right? So now, that's to let you know, I've been fit most of my adult life. I've been working out, training, competing. I've been fine even with my asthma, but I was never truly healthy. And when that moment happened is when I realized that there's a difference between being fit and being healthy. So at that point, I said, you know what? Let's start doing some reading. So the first book I picked up was by Dr. Stephen Gundry. I'm sure you know, and your listeners know who he is. And I picked up The Plant Paradox, and you know how his books kind of start off. It sounds kind of strange, right? With this language that he uses. And I'm like, vegetables and fruits are supposed to be good for me. What's this man talking about? But I kept going. And then I started making some changes that I was comfortable with. And the miraculous thing happened. I started feeling better. In fact, right. And I started making more changes. I'm like, this guy has a point. But then what I really liked about him, though, in his book, he didn't say, eat a carnivore diet for the rest of your life, be in ketosis, and that's it. He was like, no, eventually you can put things back into your diet, but you may need to take some things out that you're sensitive to or your body is reacting to. Now, to make it a little bit short, or a long story short, or long story longer, however you want to look at it, I really realized that I started feeling better, but my sleep was improved, my performance improved, my speed, my strength, my body fat went down, my blood work looked better. Everything you can think of was got better by changing my life. And then at that point, I started listening to more podcasts and reading more books, and then started working on my certifications. Now I'm going to say it's been over 3 years since I've taken any medications, no asthma problems, no eczema issues, My blood pressure got better for the first time in my entire life. I'm about to be 40 years old and I feel like I'm a 20-year-old. It's absolutely mind blowing for me.
What was the biggest change? Lifestyle or nutrition, or, did you do functional lab testing as a GI map to reveal hidden internal sources of chronic stress contributing to asthma and other symptoms?
Surprising enough, I didn't. Once I started making the changes that I needed to, I anecdotally felt the change I was looking for. I remember I listened to Sean Stevenson's podcast once, and somebody was on there and he mentioned that he became a fan of the keto diet because when he changed the keto diet, his brain was clearer, his mind was clearer.
Yeah.
And he was like, anyway, he was sold. And for me, when I started making changes, physically, I felt better. And also I was able to perform better at work. Stress-wise, I felt better. Things that used to bother me didn't bother me anymore. Things that used to annoy me didn't annoy me anymore. And then there's a host of changes that I've made, and I'm not going to get into on this podcast. It would go on until tomorrow. But the biggest thing was realizing that once I made the changes, so many things that improved that I've been trying to get. When I started this just with my asthma, right? And so many other factors improved. I didn't even know were going to improve.
Yeah. That's a lot of the times, you just want to start working on nutrition and, what you eat. And I know just, starting coaching clients is just more focused. Okay, let's just see what you're doing now. Just log in what your normal food is. And then, next phase would be, all right, let's swap this processed food out for this food and eating real food. And then progressing to, like in this one program I've done training on is a cold keto, transitioning to going lower carb and then bringing up your carbs. So what do you find works when you're working with people, or, just in general metabolic flexibility to burn fat or carbs? What do you want to do to be a more efficient fat burner when you're getting started with somebody?
So I'm going to start off with just speak about the general public, right? So I know we're going to talk a lot more about athletes as we get into it.
We'll dial it in after that. But just generally, like someone that's coming from the standard American food plan, what's your take on transitioning them into burning fat and working on metabolism?
Every approach that I take, I look at three things. I look at the scientific studies. I also look at ancestral living. When I look at ancestral living, not just general ancestors, where they're from, what did their ancestors eat?
Yeah.
And also, what are their current lifestyle choices? Like, what have they been doing for the last, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years, right? That's the first thing I look at. Once I look at that, that gives me an idea of where they are now and also what changes they are willing to make.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to use this as an example. I have a client that he's a male and he's been cycling and he loves to cycle. That's the thing, but he doesn't lose weight. He's been 60 pounds overweight for so long now. No matter how much he cycles, he just can't seem to figure out what's actually going on. It's his diet, of course. The secret is his diet, right? But when I look at his background and see, okay, he's really a really good fat burner. And I can tell by looking at everything that he's a good fat burner. The issue is that he eats a lot of carbs. And because he eats a lot of carbs, what seems to happen is his body downregulates lipase and upregulates amylase, which is the enzymes used to break down carbs, right? So what I had to do with him, was I basically threw him into ketosis. And it was within no time, I threw him into ketosis, tested his ketones. He was doing great in ketosis, and he was performing in ketosis than he was with carbs. Now, another thing with him was because he's food addicted, and this was a very important thing, because he's addicted to sugars, right? I couldn't do this, throw carbs in from time to time with him, because the minute he eats some carbs, he's going to sit down and eat a cake. And then we're going to start all over again. So I had to kick him into ketosis. Now, after a week, he started dropping weight already. Some of that is water weight. We know that already. We know that, of course. But he started losing weight. His energy levels started getting better. I tracked it from an anecdotal piece of his hunger. I said, "Are you hungry?" He's like, "No, I'm actually not hungry." He was in a calorie deficit, and it would be enough where you think he would be hungry all the time. But I was trying to get his body to create more lipase. So because I knew that, I had him eat right as enough so his body would create more lipase to be able to build burning fat, but not the point to where he was starving himself, which is where a lot of people go wrong when it comes to calorie deficit. If they're just going to starve themselves and lose weight, it doesn't work, right? Now, throw that in with him also cycling. He cycles in ketosis. He doesn't use carbs for fuel. Now, over time, we add the carbs back in, and if you want me to talk about that, I can talk about that right now. But I think your question was in the beginning, what did I do? So in his case, it was more of a matter of I knew he would perform well in ketosis, and that's what I did. Now, flip side, I can have someone who's not necessarily a fast oxidizer, right? They don't burn fat very well. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times with them, that has to be more of a transition. Because if I throw you to ketosis, especially based on your lifestyle, like he cycles a lot. So his body quickly switched over into it needed a source of fuel. I may have someone, and a lot of times it's females who are not as fast oxidizers as a lot of males are naturally are, right? So I then would have to slowly drop the carbs and increase the fat. And that may be a longer process, but that may work well for them as well. And the reason why I'm drawing that distinction is because the mistake a lot of people make when not working with an expert is they think, you know what, keto sounds great. Let me just eat all these fats and proteins and stuff and forget my carbs and I'm going to be fine. But no, if you don't understand your body, what state you are at this particular time, based on those parameters I laid out, as far as the science studies, your ancestral living, and also how you've been living, let's say the last 10 years or so, without understanding that groundwork, you may have a hard time of properly putting ketosis into your life.
Okay, I've got like 10 questions. So going back a little bit. So when you have someone that's switching from a standard American diet, the SAD diet, to lower carb, higher fat, higher protein, when they are addicted to sugar and they just crave carbs, sweet, candy, garbage, we say, how have you found any tips, strategies for people that are trying to do more lower carb, higher fat protein, but they're struggling with that demon of, candy, sugar, cookies, chips, eat all the crap? How do you find that work with clients that have that addiction, sugar addiction?
Now you're speaking my language. So this is one of my favorite things to tackle because I get this question all the time. So one of the big things is how they train. Mm-hmm. I look at how they train a lot because, and you understand the science behind this, whenever we train in a like high intensity zones, like zone 3, zone 4, on a consistent basis, we don't realize that can cause cravings because of biologically how our bodies work. So I look at how they train, and oftentimes I find, if not, I would say at least 80% of the time when I ask this question, I find that they're doing a lot of cardio, high intensity work, and not enough slow zone 1, zone 2 training or strength training. And that's a very important thing to understand but from a biological standpoint, we're not designed to be running all the time. Our ancestors never just ran around just for the sake of running a 5K. They ran because they're running away from something. And that's what our bodies are designed for. Our body's designed to say, okay, we're being chased. If you're constantly in a high intensity zone, your body thinks you're in danger. What happens biologically when that happens? Well, our body is going to ramp up cortisol. Adrenaline may raise, may then increase what our body may prefer, sugars and carbs for fuel, right? That's just a very simple way of putting it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times I look at how they train. Mm-hmm. Now, once I look at how they train, I start to then change how they train because I want to say, I want cardio into your life. This is one thing that annoys me. I see it on Instagram and it gets on my nerves. People say, I strength train. I lost a lot of weight. I don't need to do cardio. That's absolute nonsense. Anybody that tells you that, look the other way, run away, and don't even look back. We need cardio in our life for a cardiovascular health, and you just as an athlete, we need cardio in our life. But I do switch to where they're doing more strength training and more endurance-based training right? Which promote in zone 1 and zone 2.
Mm.
As they do that, that then will promote more fat oxidation, fat burning, right? So burning fat from the food you eat and then fat oxidation from the fat from your own body fat, right? Yeah. Now, I do add in cardio because you need cardio as well. And what a lot of people miss is that with the right combination of cardio and strength training, even after you do, let's say high intensity, I should say, I don't want to throw around cardio too much, high intensity, even after you do that, your body will become so adapted to that post training, probably in an hour or two, it just depends on the person. You may even go into fat burning as well, but you have to train your body to be able to do that. The next thing I look at, one of the other things I look at, this may not be in exact order, depends on the person, is their lifestyle, their stress levels, right? If you're constantly stressed, you're constantly in a high stress environment, or not just the environment, but how do you react to that stress can also lead to cravings. So that's something we discussed. So I've had clients where I've had to have them work with a mental health specialist to help them with things like that outside of what they're dealing with. And they realize, I've had clients come to me and say, I didn't realize how much stress was impacting my life. And now I'm actually, not only am I losing weight, but I wake up better. Then I'll also look at their sleep quality. How well are you sleeping? How's your circadian rhythm working? And we tie those things in. So basically, to answer your question, make it as short as I could, look at the training. I look at the stress levels in your life. And I also look at all the life epigenetics, all the lifestyle factors, including your sleep quality, before I make any decision.
So do you find people are addicted to sugar, candy, and, garbage stuff, processed foods, because they're doing too much of a high intensity workout or doing too much carb burning exercise and too much stress causing that insulin resistance? Or, so that's one question. But then I have so many people that are trying, it makes it sound simple. All right, phase 1, we're just going to swap out for whole foods. Phase 2, we're going to do a cold keto, 50 grams of carbs for 2 weeks, and then go to phase 3, where we're going to do, cycle it in carbs a little bit higher and just kind of see your good sweet spot. But I think I find that the struggle for people that come to going through that transition is like, how do you mentally work on breaking up with the ice cream and the cookies and all that stuff that they just crave? They just can't, they battle that addiction. That's like the brain, the dopamine rush from the sugar high. And they just really struggle to get to that phase 3 of doing more of the cold keto phase and then transitioning to your sweet spot, because we don't, as athletes, I don't believe we need to stay 50 grams of carbs. And that's just to get fat adapted. But talk anything to do with breaking the addiction, the psychological part, the mental addiction we have.
So I've had a few clients who had that issue, and I had them work with a mental health specialist
that part
to help them with things.
The why.
The why, exactly, because the why is important. And this is the thing that most people miss, and I'm sure you know this. How do you start your day? And when you work with a good mental health specialist, a good transformation specialist, and you start to focus on how you start your day. Let me give you an example. So I start my mornings with meditation, red light therapy, playing my guitar.
Yeah.
And that's switch out of meditation to guitar based on how my fingers hurt that day. But I kind of, that's my thing, right? Every morning. And I started off slow. I wake up at 6:30 every morning, and that's my routine. I start off in a very parasympathetic state. Now, most Americans start off in a sympathetic state. They wake up, the alarm blast goes off. Yeah, oh my God, they gotta go, right? That wakes up in the morning. Then you gotta take a shower, get the kids ready. You have a husband. All right, you gotta yell at him. If you live in Orlando, where I live, everybody drives like 5 miles an hour down the street. So you're yelling in traffic, you go to work. So by the time within the first hour, like, you just want to eat everything because you're just stressed.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the things that they've worked on with their specialists. And even with myself, I'll work on how they start their day, because you want to start your day in that parasympathetic state. And then the sleep is important, because when you know all the benefits of sleep. I'm not going to hash all that right now, but when you get quality sleep, you will actually wake up feeling better, where it helps you to start your day better as well, when your circadian rhythm is functioning the way that it should. But if it's not, you may get 7 hours of sleep or get 8 hours of sleep or whatever may be best for you, but you still may not wake up feeling great. So the combination of how you start your day and your circadian clock working well, of course, you combine that with the training, those things can really change your cravings and make it easy for you to switch over into a fat burning state. And there's also gut environment and all that stuff that also plays a part in it, right? Yeah. But just for the basic person, or just the basic person, but for the basic, for someone who's really trying to get started, those are the lifestyle things you need to look at that can really change your life.
Well, that's what I call the holistic method, is what I created 10 years ago. Is just, as a personal trainer and doing coaching for athletes forever, it's just like, you don't get results by just working on your exercise. And then I was always working on nutrition with people, but then it's like, all right, how's your sleep? What are you doing the rest of the time when as a personal trainer or a coach for someone doing an Ironman or marathon, what's going on the rest of the time when I'm not with you or just talking to you? That's more important. Like you're saying, my other elements of the holistic method are the sleep and the stress and the movement throughout the day, and the digestion and gut health and hydration and happiness. And that's what I find as I get older, I get wiser, that it's like happiness, joy, gratitude. And it's like what Ben Greenfield talks about now as I work with him as a coach, that it's, finding your purpose, find your joy, what makes you excited every day. Like you said, waking up in the morning and starting with meditation, you're playing a guitar, stuff that brings you joy and happiness, rather than the shock in the system with the alarm and get up and go. And we're on fight or flight mode and just stuck in sympathetic overdrive all day long. So I think as we get older, it's just learning that, all right, I don't need to live my life like that. And we can choose how we start the day and how we finish the day to optimize our health and our performance in life and our sports. But going back to what I said in the beginning, for what we're training for and doing this year, but I always talk about 30 years from now, how do I want to be showing up to life? Like everyone knows now, my dad just passed away at age 80 and my mom is the same age. And I'm like, Mom, you got to start exercising for your first time. It's like, this is your choice and all this stuff. You watch how your parents age, like, I don't want to live like that. We're going to go traveling around the world and doing this and that. I'm like, Mom, you got to get fit. You got to get strong. You got to be able to do this stuff, and don't blame the aging process. It's not too late to start strengthening. So anyways, I just think, I'm on the same page that being an athlete, we want to be fit and healthy from the inside out, but also I'm adding on happy. You got to be fit, healthy, and happy. Because I think that's an important part too, because you listen to so many people that are burnt out and they're exhausted and they're just keep pushing and doing all these races and doing whatever ultra events. But it's like, all right, does that bring you joy? Does that bring you happiness? So I think fit, healthy, and happy I wish there's a simple way to say that, but that's what I feel like we all need.
I want to share a quick story here. The other night, because this just happened to me. This happened to me before, but recently again, I had my red light on and I was playing my acoustic, my nylon acoustic, and I had a spiritual experience. Every time I strung a chord, I felt it through my entire body. And I told so many people about that story. I was like, it was so transformational. The feeling was just so good. I did not want to stop playing. And as soon as I finished playing, I laid down and I went to sleep and I fell asleep and I had like awesome sleep.
Yeah.
And so I like the happy. I like you add that to it because that's true. I've had friends who are very fit and they're healthy, especially compared to the general population, right? But they chase that dopamine rush. Like they always they want to work out and do these events because they're training. They're really chasing that rush. Like they're doing it for that feel, right? Which can be good, but it can also, anything can be an unhealthy addiction, right? So I like what you brought up. And the movement thing, I just want to add to that. I have a saying, you know how they say that a body in motion stays in motion? A metabolism in motion stays in motion, right? So I say move. I have a rule. I don't sit for more than about 50 to an hour at a time if I don't have to.
Yeah.
And I get up, even if it's for 5 minutes. And that's how I get my minimum 10,000 steps every day.
Yeah. It's movement throughout the day. And I've said that for a while, but it's, not just counting as an athlete. Oh, I went to the gym this morning at 5:30, lifted weights, and then went for a 45-minute run with some intervals at Torrey Pines and then came home. So am I going to sit on my rear end all day and work and think I'm a fit athlete? So I think it's so important to, move throughout the day, but that goes to metabolism. So the main topic I want to get into is you've done metabolic coaching with Lumen, you're training with them and coaching people. How would you describe metabolic flexibility and how that helps people with fat loss and performance goals?
Definitely. Again, you're in my wheelhouse. So let's get this, let's get this going. Let's get this going. So I can't talk about metabolic flexibility without talking about the gut, right?
Yeah.
So our bodies use enzymes to break down fat, carbs, and protein. So, and I kind of hint on it earlier when I talk. So
lipase.
Proteases would be the highest the main for protein, lipase for fat, and amylase for carbs, right? And there's some other that's sprinkled in there, but those are the big three that we really focus on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what happens, most people are not protein deficient. I'm not getting to that as much, but as far as lipase and amylase, that seems to really be the issue. Now, this diet that's been given to us, and you know where I'm going with this, the wonderful food pyramid, right? Yeah. That tells us go low fat and eat carbs. Well, what's happened in the past 20, 30 years? Yeah. Obesity has gone up. Type 2 diabetes has gone up. Just about every health issue you think of has gotten worse, right? So let's first talk about the weight management part. If you significantly cut fats out of your life, and this is the lifestyle piece I was talking about on those three sides. If you significantly cut fats out of your life and eat high carbs, even if they're healthy carbs, our body is efficient. Some might even call it lazy. And our body's going to say, you know what? No need to break down fat because you're not feeding me much fat anyway. You're not going to lose all your lipase, from what I know, but you will lose a lot of your lipase. The body will down-regulate that. Then your body would say, you know what? Feed me a lot of carbs. I'm going to upregulate amylase. So what happens? At that point, when you eat foods that are fat, it has fatty foods, especially more than what you're accustomed to, and your body it doesn't have adequate lipase to break that down, you can store a lot of that. You gain a lot of weight, right? And then your triglycerides may be higher. You can store some around your organs, which leads to visceral fat and all those things. And that's the big crime of calorie restriction, not focusing on what you're eating, or calorie restriction and low fat. Right? Like extremely low fat. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't want to eat grilled chicken breasts and broccoli for the rest of my life. Like, that just sounds like a miserable existence to me. But, but that's the things that we kind of been telling people. And I know some bodybuilders do it when they get ready for a show and stuff like that, but that's a whole different conversation. Now, so that's the other piece. The second piece is then we hear about this fantastic keto diet and we're like, let's eat a whole lot of fat and just forget the carbs. And then we do that. And then later on, you start to add the carbs back in. You lost a lot of weight. You lost some weight. You started to feel good. You're like, I'm great. Let's start throwing some carbs back in after, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. By the way, research said about 6 weeks or so, you can really switch into fat burn, upregulate lipase. Depends on the person, but 6 to 8 weeks seems to be the sweet spot where your body really starts to downregulate amylase. And that timing is very important. But you've been doing it for months and months, sometimes a year, and then you just get stuck. And then not only do you get stuck, is that you try to eat carbs, and then guess what? You start gaining the weight back because your body did the flip side. It said, you're giving me a bunch of fat. I'm going to break down fat. So let's create more lipase. But I'm not going to worry about carbs. So I'm not going to worry about amylase. So let's downregulate amylase. And then you're stuck. But here comes metabolic flexibility. Metabolic flexibility, for one, looks at where you are. And I'm going to say this independent of Lumen, just from an anecdotal piece. If you look at where you are, and if you know where you are, you can start to say you're a high carb burner. You can go into medium or low fat for a while, but you have to also, and this is the important thing, you have to also down or lessen your carbs at the same time. Because if you're a high carb burner and you go high fat and you're still medium to high carbs, your body is going to stay towards the carbs and you're going to store the fat. So you have to down the carbs and increase the fat so your body can tip over. And for some people, some of my clients, I may push them into ketosis or not. And if I have to put you into ketosis, and it's a gradual step into ketosis, and I will do that to get you there, because basically your body has to get to the point where it's like, I just have way too much amylase. Because remember, humans are born with more amylase than any other mammal on the face of the planet. So our bodies have to downregulate that amylase that we tend to produce naturally. And a lot of times a keto diet is the way to do it. But then the other side of that is, you're not going to be in ketosis for 12 months or something crazy like that, right? Because at some point, once you become very efficient and you become let's say a high fat oxidizer, or you have more lipase, then you want to, at the right time, add the carbs back in from time to time. Like some athletes, let's take from athlete standpoint, you know the importance of carbs for muscle glycogen storage, right? And performance. Well, I listened to your episode when you talked about this. I'm at the same point as you are. I do the same thing. I have days where I call them boost days or refeed days, where I have more carbs into my diet. But within a few hours of that, I can easily blow into a meter and I'm breaking ketones again, right? Because of the efficiency of my metabolism. I've been training my metabolism for years, and I have enough lipase and amylase. Because what people tend to misunderstand is they think ketones means you run out of carbs and then you just go straight into ketosis. There's so much more that goes into that. And you want to have the carbs, the stored glycogen, when needed, so your body can use it. But when not needed, your body can run on fat when it needs to. And that's the beauty of being metabolically flexible.
Yeah, there's so much there. I mean, there's so much information and confusion out there because of people that have been trying to do nutritional ketosis. And they think, and athletes, specifically athletes, want to stay in nutritional ketosis all the time. But I know it's not ideal for athletes. And there's a lot more information out there that it's more energy metabolism. If you listen to energy flux is this new word that I don't know if Jay Feldman started that or where it started coming up, but Ben Greenfield just had his Q&A podcast last week talking about energy flux, carb timing. If we say strategically add those carbs post a high intensity workout, when you're doing a double workout or before your evening meal, have some in there. But I think what's happened is we go to one end or the other. It's like all or nothing. And so we get scared of having any carbs, and carbs become evil. Before, growing up, I'm 10 years older than you are, but it's, fat phobia. And now it's carb phobia. And when I'm coaching people, like, add in some carbs. And then for female athletes, let's go around ovulation days and then, feeding your estrogen and then dialing it up a little bit more the end of your cycle when we're trying to feed progesterone hormones. But people like, oh, I'm afraid to have carbs because I'm insulin resistant and I'm, prone to diabetes. And it's so going back to, carb addiction, that psychological part, but now it's about carbs that like, oh my gosh, I can't have any because then I'm going to binge and I won't be able to stop eating and I don't know how to control. So I'm always thinking, okay, I'm not saying eat whatever carbs. It's, as like Dr. Mindy will say, nature's carbs and eating real food and having some berries. But it's that fear, because even myself, I know I'll get headaches from eating a few berries by itself. Like right away, it's like, that's too much for me, but I have to pair it with things. But it's more like Jay Feldman saying, like, well, why is that happening? That means you're not metabolizing carbs. So maybe I've been too fat adapted or metabolically inflexible of burning fat, like you're saying, and not having the proper digestive enzymes to break down carbs. So I think that's a fascinating conversation for people that have been doing keto for a long time and stuck in like, I'm only supposed to be nutritional ketosis and showing my ketone levels to be such and such all the time, 24/7. And now we're like, okay, should I add a little more carbs? Am I going to get out of fat burning? Is it going to impair my performance, my workout, my race. And so I think that's kind of the conversation where I wanted to dive into with you because of your coaching and your experience in working with Lumen. And I'm doing a BioSense, similar, breath test. And then I'm trying to track with Keto Mojo glucose and my ketones and say, okay, what is the right amount for me? Is this I'm trying to lose weight, but am I not losing weight because I'm not eating enough either? So anyways, I'm just mind dumping, but just what are your thoughts on, the way our trends are in the low carb industry, how people are fear of carbohydrates?
I think you nailed it on the head. I think it's the we just all or nothing mentality. Carbs are bad, fats are good. I've had people talk about fruits, eating fruits are bad and doing this. And I'm like, okay, we just gotten way too far down this rabbit hole. Like we're just making this way more complicated than we really have to really make it, right? It's really about balance. And the thing about balance is that balance looks different for each person. I'll give an example. There are times in the year that I stay in ketosis longer than times that I'm not. And the reason why, because for example, if I'm preparing for, let's say, a 5K or a 10K, the way I eat is going to be different. And I'm going to eat more carbs during that time frame. If I'm not necessarily preparing for anything, then I prefer, that's for me, to stay into ketosis longer, and I drop my carbs because I'm not preparing. I don't need that extra storage. I also love to lift, and I like to have that stored muscle glycogen. Yeah. So I don't go for a long time and just not eat any carbs because I feel the difference in my performance. But a key thing, and the mental thing you mentioned, if my blood sugar is too high, and I wore NutriSense for a couple of weeks, and I learned this, and I feel like all biohackers and health experts do that now. It's if my blood sugar is too high, I have a hard time focusing the next morning. Yeah. And that's because I overdid my carbs the night before. Yeah. Now, I love blueberries. I love cherries. Those are my go-to at night to give my brain a little glucose. But if I go crazy, it's I don't know, we're hanging out and I don't know, some cake or something when I'm, around the wrong timing, then it impacts how I think. Now, after a couple of hours and I move around because I walk a lot. So within a couple of hours, I'm 4,000 or 5,000 steps in, and usually I'm fine. But I can tell the difference of how my body is. So those things are extremely important. So I think the mindset, the all or nothing mindset is what's screwing us up. But it's important to know as an athlete that you can perform well in ketosis, but having the stored glycogen for use when needed is something that we need to underscore as well.
Well, I think it's what Rob Wolf spoke about in his book, and we had a podcast with him earlier this year, is your carb tolerance and how much carbs are not going to spike my glucose up. So say we want to go up just no more than 30 on your glucose, like a CGM NutriSense I used, and we don't want that big of spike. So it is, testing and not guessing. What is my carb tolerance? Is this food going to, like rice, spike it up, or sweet potatoes? But if I have it with a steak and, lots of grass-fed butter or ghee on my potato, is that better? So it's, it's figuring out timing the nature's carbs, not saying eating a Cliff Bar with 50, 60 grams of carbs, or having, muffins and bagels, but having nature's foods, like the root vegetables are going to be higher carbs, and berries and fruit, but pairing them with things, but finding your carb tolerance. What is your tipping point? But also going back to, talking about lifting weights, and I love to lift heavy weights and trying to do more HIIT training, that you have a larger, what I think Dr. Gabrielle Leon said, this is like your suitcases. You have more storage area, the bigger suitcase you have. So your muscles, the more muscular you are, your carb tolerance is a little higher, and you can put that in. So
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought it up because I didn't even think about that as well, but you're right. Your how much muscle you have is very important. That is, and this is one of the things that drive me crazy with women, because I hear this a lot. You know what I'm gonna say? I don't want to look like a man. I don't want to have muscles. I'm like, you do realize you're supposed to be like, you just, I would say about depends on the person, 40-50% skeletal muscle. Most women are not going to be that much, but essentially your body is supposed to be more muscle when we look at skeletal muscle, cardiovascular muscle, smooth muscle, so on and so forth. But having muscle is important, especially when you're talking about skeletal muscle, because that's your for your storage. And what a lot of people don't realize is that when you build lean muscle, that has a direct impact on your metabolism. Mm-hmm. Very important to know that. And when you build lean muscle, that can help you to. I'll put it this way. Let me change my phrasing. So sarcopenia is a loss of muscle mass, your skeletal muscle, as we age, right?
Yeah.
So you want to build more lean muscle because that helps with fighting off sarcopenia. It's a sign that you're not going through sarcopenia. Now, when it comes to sarcopenia, there's a lot more than just weight training that goes into it. Because even if you're weight training, especially as you're older, but you have a high omega-6 diet, high inflammation, that can lead to sarcopenia as well. Anything that damages your gut can lead to sarcopenia, because these are all age-related, I guess you say, diseases or illnesses, right? Yeah. So just like you said, the weight training is very important, extremely important, even for females, if not even more important, because most females just don't weight train.
Yes.
You want to have that space, but you also want to have the right diet surrounding it so you can slow down the aging process and fight off age-related illnesses like sarcopenia.
Mm-hmm. So how do you know if you're trying to burn fat, if people are looking at weight loss using, people feel like they need to stay in nutritional ketosis, but is it possible to still burn fat if you're not in nutritional ketosis? And if you're using something as Lumen or Biosense to track your breath test of acetones on ketones, is it goal to keep in ketosis to burn fat and have that? Or do you find it's in and out of it, you can still have results?
Awesome. So I'm going to take this from the Lumen side, because that's where I'm a lot more experienced.
Yes.
So with Lumen, the goal of Lumen is not necessarily nutritional ketosis. The goal of Lumen is to train your body to have adequate lipase for when it needs to burn fat and adequate amylase for when it needs to burn carbs. So that's a little different than, say, you and I, right? But the traditional person out there who says, they're having problems losing weight, I recommend checking out Lumen, because they need to know where the state of their metabolism is. And by taking the breath test with Lumen, and when it learns your metabolism, by the CO2 level in your breath, it will let you know if you're burning carbs primarily or fat primarily, and when. So like for you and I, who, let's say we're in ketosis and we blow into Lumen, ketones and carbs kind of look like each other when it comes to the CO2 production in the Krebs cycle, right? So because of that, if you're in ketosis and you're blowing into Lumen, it may even still tell you that you're burning carbs. So if you're a keto athlete, I would recommend.
I just pulled out my. Okay. All right, now it's back. Jeez.
Yes. I wasn't sure what you wanted me to do there, so I was kind of like, what?
No, I'll cut this out, but let me pause. All right, sorry about that little interruption, but I think what's confusing and such good information that you're sharing is that we need the proper digestive enzymes to break down our macronutrients, carbs, protein, and fat. And so learning as you get the biofeedback from Lumen, a device that you can measure your metabolism, if you're burning carbs or burning fat, it's having the right cofactors basically to help your metabolism be efficient. So it's more like the why can't we burn fat? How to enhance our metabolism, and what are the tools to get there so we can be losing weight, fat loss, but still metabolize carbs. And I'll finish with, is it goal to be primarily fat burning and carbs are a backup fuel tank, as I've been, told for years. So now talk about that a little bit. I know I interrupted you, so go ahead.
No worries at all. So we're talking about Lumen, right? Yeah. And so essentially, for those who are not familiar with a flexible metabolism or metabolic flexibility, really look into Lumen, because what happens is that when we eat food, right? And it goes through a Krebs cycle. Primarily fats and carbs is what I'm focusing on here. It goes through the Krebs cycle. Now, at the end of the Krebs cycle, it produces CO2, right? When you blow into lumen, it raises CO2 level in your breath because traditionally speaking, for most people, you're going to burn carbs faster than you burn fat, right? When you're not in ketosis, the goal is not to be in ketosis when it comes to lumen. It's to burn fat when you need it and burn carbs when you need it, which is a little different than you and I, right? Because we stay in ketosis more. So essentially, like if you and I blow into lumen, it may even tell me I'm burning carbs, but it's really because you really can't tell the difference. So I wouldn't recommend lumen for any kind of keto athlete. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, if you blow into it and it tells you what you're burning. Now, if you're realizing that when every morning I wake up and I blow into lumen, I'm burning carbs. That means that when you were sleeping, you are burning more carbs than fat. That is an issue because when you're at rest, you're supposed to be burning fat for energy. I'm drinking exogenous ketones right now while I'm doing this podcast. And later on when I train, I'll change the way I eat, right? Mm-hmm. When I'm walking around, when I'm playing my guitar, and also using those times, I'm usually in a parasympathetic state and I'm burning fat for energy. But when I need quick burst of energy, that's why the storage is important, then I can burn carbs. So like for me, when I wasn't in ketosis, now I was testing out lumen, I'd realize that I would get up, I would blow 1 or 2, meaning that I'm primarily a fat burner. But whenever I eat carbs or even post a workout, I'm usually in a 3 or 4, which is higher carb, less fat, right? And that's the beauty of using lumen to be metabolically flexible because when you let's say you realize that you're burning fat when you wake up every morning, they give you nutrition advice. And as you follow nutrition advice, you can log into the app just like you would MyFitnessPal, something like that, what you've eaten. So you follow the macros. And as you follow the macros, over time, your body will start to switch from carb burning into fat burning when it needs to because you're eating the right amount of fats to get your body there. Now, flip side of that, somebody's been in ketosis all their life, right? Then what happens is you blow into it and you're burning carbs every morning because you're not really in ketosis anymore. You're really doing the lumen approach. So you realize, okay, you are a fat burner. But no matter how many carbs you eat, you can't switch over to burning carbs. So then lumen, their dietitians will give you specific nutrition advice to eat the right amount of carbs along with fat and protein. So eventually your body makes that switch to burning carbs when it needs to. And while it keeps that fat burning capability, right? And that's the beauty of it's like being in the middle, that metabolic flexibility. Now, to more direct answer to your question, I believe that we should be in fat burning most of the time because I'm not in stress most of the time. I don't need quick energy most of the time. When I'm doing my day-to-day on the computer, creating my podcast episode, we're interviewing guests, training clients, I'm in fat burning mostly, right? In my case, ketosis mostly, right? But again, when I'm going to train, I rely on some of my stored glycogen for glucose for that training, or even post-workout, I may replenish with some carbs to keep my muscle glycogen storage. And it also goes about, having a bigger suitcase and stuff like that. I think, I have a, let's just say, I have a medium-sized suitcase. Let's not say a large suitcase. I have like a medium-sized suitcase to fill up, right? It's not a small suitcase, but, it takes some time to fill it up, right?
Yeah.
So whereas that is important. So, yeah, so being metabolically flexible, using lumen to be metabolically flexible really helps you to get there because it helps you understand your body. They give you the guidance. And then things are changed. But this is the important thing another important thing that I like. Once you sign up for Lumen, you join their Facebook group, and there are about 4 or 5 experts in that group who are expertise in different things. So like Maria, she's an expert in women's health, and she talks about menopause and how that impacts your cortisol levels, stuff like that. I'm one of the group experts as well, and I talk about training with metabolic flexibility, and we have some people there who are athletes who struggle to understand how much carbs that they should or fat they should be eating. So then the questions comes around, what's your stress levels. Because even if you're eating the right amount of food, but your stress, and the back you just said that, so I'm not going to harp on it. Yeah. If your stress levels are too high, even if you eat what you're supposed to, you can still be in a primarily a carb burning state for that reason. Yeah. If you're not getting quality sleep, if you're not hydrated, if you're going through your cycle, if you're not moving throughout the day, there are many other factors that can play into you being metabolically flexible. So that's why it has to be a beautiful combination.
So with exercise, because I'm going to run out of time as always, but with exercising and matching that, what have you learned if you do the test after a strength training that's more glycogen depleting, maybe some HIIT training versus doing zone 1-2 long run or short run, bike ride, like more endurance that should be fat burning? What do you find people see and what's ideal? Like after I lifted weight, should I have it more carb metabolism because my body's trying to refuel those glycogen stores? And then after a long fat burning workout, should I still see myself being in more ketones? So it shows I'm more fat metabolism.
Okay. I'm going to try to make this one real quick. And it's really a simple answer. So ideally you want to see what I see. When I strength train or some type of endurance training, it depends on the type of strength training as well. I'm going to more likely see a 1 or a 2, which I'm going to be a fat burn. I usually wait about an hour to test it to see where I am.
Okay.
If I do like a high intensity workout, if I test within an hour, I'm going to see more of a 3 or 4 with more of a carb burning. But if I wait a little bit within a few hours after that and test again, I switch back into fat burn. Which is why I answered the question earlier was you want to be in fat burn outside of your intense exercise times, but can use glucose or glycogen when you need to.
Yeah, I think because that's what I'm experimenting for myself because N=1. And I woke up this morning and I took the breath test and my blood test and I wasn't showing ketones. I'm like, okay, that's weird. It's first thing in the morning and it said low. And I thought, okay, then you have to look at like my sleep was really good last night. It was a little shorter than it should have been, but I had lots of deep sleep. And then doing it right after my workout, I had a little more, but then I should wait a little bit longer, like an hour after, 2 hours. So it is like you have to be almost at home or like pack everything with you so you can really test this out and then document it as an individual to really figure out your personalized nutrition program to match your nutrition with your exercises. I keep telling my clients and working with them, it's like, all right, let's figure out what is the best ratio of foods to eat, what to eat when, and how to time that with your workout so you can improve fat loss and performance and of course longevity.
I'm 100% there with you.
But yeah, you have to have these devices to really figure that out. So you're just kind of guessing, like, oh, I feel okay. But then, it goes to a whole nother podcast topic is fasting and fasting too long. And that's what we can talk about another time, but the energy flex and too low of energy in versus energy out. And then how women are more sensitive to that. So we get more hormone dysregulation because we're not eating enough and not getting enough calories in our eating window because we're doing too much extended fasting with too much exercise. So then we're just not really losing weight because we're not eating enough. And that's what I think I did. I was, doing OMAD and, the 16-8, but then I'd be working out 2-3 times a day. So it's like, all right, I'm not losing weight. And I always say, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. It's like, okay, maybe I should eat more. That's so backwards thinking. But sometimes I think we have to look at, I need to eat more foods, but it could still be low carb, but more fat and protein. And then, another conversation too is strategic carb timing, but strategic protein timing. So there's so much to go into. So I have a zillion questions just to pick your brain of your thoughts of what I always think about too. So thank you for putting up with me.
This has been a fun interview. I just want to say one quick thing, by the way. I know we got to go in a second. One quick thing. Gadgets. Biohackers, we love our gadgets, but we talk about this, and then I know you're going to agree with this. We love our gadgets, and they're great for us. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to you making those changes, and the gadgets that you use should help you with making those right changes, not using gadgets because you hear that Narado or Zeco or says it's fantastic. It's because it's helping you to get the results that you're actually looking for.
All right. So finish up with your top 3 tips to help people lose weight fat weight.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, those ketones are going down the wrong pipe.
Yeah, so sorry about that. So quickly, first thing is know where you are. Understand if you are a fat burner or a carb burner. And if you don't use lumen, there's ways to figure it out by looking at your lifestyle and what you've been doing over the last 10 years, because for most of it, that's going to work. Second is after you know where you are, you want to start looking at how to get to that next side. So if you're a carb burner, you may want to start down regulating the carbs and up regulating the fats if you need to. Maybe be into ketosis if you're at that point and you understand it. But something else that we haven't discussed is the third thing. The third thing I'm going to say is look at how you train. Look at how you train is very important, because you want to train. If you want to be a fat burner, you need to look at more zone 1, zone 2 training. High intensity can push you into carb burning, but at the same time, you want to do strength training should always be the base of your workout, and proper functional strength training should always be the base of your workout.
Yes, I agree. I would just add in, as I get older and premenopausal, we want to do a little bit more short burst training in there too. Cause I think I was doing too much slow. So it's like, I would say not one end or the other, but that Goldilocks effect that we'll talk about on your show, just how we need a little bit of both. And especially Dr. Stacey Sims says in her book, and for premenopausal women, we want more burst training, because as we get older, we need that. And as I would say, embrace the aging process, not blame it, but make those adjustments to your training. Because for years, I've always done long, slow distance, but now it's like, all right, I'm really slow. I need to add a little burst training into that finish of my run and get that quickness back. So it depends, when you're 40 or 50, you might need to adjust that training recommendation. And then I get into mapping it out with your menstrual cycle for females too, is kind of cool to do. But yeah, I actually have another call after you, and I was going to take my ketones. I don't know, what ketones are you drinking in your water?
They're from, I can't think of the name right now. I got to tell you later. It's a new one that I'm trying out.
I'm trying the HBMN ketone IQ.
Nice.
Keep it brain fuel, because I don't have time to eat for a bit. So fun chatting. I'm sure people have questions, and I'll kind of clarify some things in the show notes and wrap up with the post-podcast finish on this, because I know I was rambling. There's so many things to talk about with fellow podcasters and coaches that is just really good to dive into. So hopefully we don't confuse everyone totally, but I'll kind of put it all in the show notes and summarize the main points that I and you were trying to make, and look at using any of these devices to test. We'll put links in the show notes. So thanks guys for listening, and thanks for sharing your passion and purpose and your mission in our world.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.